The college football offseason is off to a hot start. I wasn't planning to do a video tonight, but with all the news going on with the transfer portal and Clemson's coaching staff, wanted to jump on, talk about it, give a little analysis, share some thoughts, and definitely get in the comments and give your thoughts. I'm interested to hear what you think about all of this. So let's start. In this video, let's talk about the transfer portal and what we're already seeing from Clemson, because I think it's it's reason to be extremely optimistic. This is the most optimistic I felt about Clemson's football program, at least since the loss to Duke, maybe even going back further. I think some really good things are transpiring in terms of getting Clemson back to the college football playoff. And I don't just mean because the college football playoff is expanding. All right, so 4 guys have already entered the transfer portal from Clemson: Hunter Helms, Mitchell Mays, Sage Ennis, and Beaux Collins. So some thoughts on these guys. First of all, this is a little bit of a touchy topic to even talk about, because a lot of Clemson fans are sensitive about the transfer portal in general, and Clemson doesn't need it and things like that. I'm going to share my opinion on it. You're welcome to disagree. Again, this is just my opinion. Also, I want to be totally respectful to all 4 of these players. None of them got in trouble. None of them were kicked off the team. We're thankful for their time at Clemson. All that being said, I think these guys leaving and freeing up roster spots is going to be a net positive for Clemson. Hunter Helms was a perfectly good quarterback. I actually think he was a little bit underrated and perhaps could have seen more opportunity. But they went out and they got Paul Tyson to fill that role. So it was duplicative of what Hunter Helms was giving you. Perhaps they thought Tyson would be far and above better than they got and would be a strong number 2, but Helms won the job anyway as the number 2, and then they didn't hardly use Helms anyway. So if Tyson does end up staying, which we still don't know for sure as of this recording if he will, then Hunter Helms just frees up a scholarship. If Paul Tyson also leaves, Clemson will probably need to go in and make sure they have another quarterback besides just Kate Glubnick and Chris Vizina. But as of now, Hunter Helms just frees up a scholarship where they can help their roster in other places. Mitchell Mays played a lot, and so losing him, you do lose a lot of experience. But I think at the end of the year, you saw Harris Sewell, a true freshman, take his spot. Mitchell Mays consistently got poor PFF grades throughout his entire career, kind of an example of a guy that didn't really develop at Clemson. We'll talk more about that in another video with coaches departing. But he's a guy who, again, not to say he's bad, not to say he did anything wrong, but he's not really a plus player. He's not a championship level player or starter in the ACC or let alone playoff contender kind of level. And so I think he can go somewhere else and have and play a lot and make an impact. And I think Clemson can use that opportunity to bring someone from the portal or just give those snaps to a guy like Sewell who still has the upside and time to develop. Sage Ennis leaving hurts a little bit in terms of, he was a good blocker and he was the number 2 tight end. But I think you've got some talent in Josh Sapp, and with Christian Bettenker coming in and Bernie still coming back, Ennis's role was going to be pretty limited. So I think this gives more opportunity for higher upside players. And then the most interesting of these is Beaux Collins. If you're in our bunches group, we've talked about Beaux Collins departing, and I'm just dropping the little banner there below. Anyone who donates any amount, either through the thanks button or Venmo, I'll send you an invite to our bunches group. Just give me your email in the comments. Anyway, we had talked about how Beaux Collins could potentially leave, maybe go back out west. I think it makes sense for him because he thinks he's an NFL guy. Maybe he needs an elite quarterback to pull that out of him. But for Clemson, I actually think it could be a net positive, and here's why. Is Beaux Collins a quality player? I think the answer is yes. Is Clemson's wide receiver core in a bad spot without him? I think in the South Carolina game you saw, very much so. But my concern was that for at least the last 2 years, Clemson and the coaching staff treated him like he was a legitimate number 1 outside wide receiver on a team that wants to go win championship level games, right? And that's not what he is. He's just not that explosive in an offense that badly needs someone to be explosive. He doesn't have the speed. He did have the one game or the one catch early season against, I think it was Charleston Southern, where he did a great double move. But generally speaking, he doesn't have the speed to be a truly explosive offensive player. And Clemson continued to put him in that role. I thought before the season, I thought it was fairly obvious that they needed to make a move to bring in the type of explosive outside player for the role that Beaux Collins was in, but they were loyal to Beaux Collins, gave him another chance, and he was fine. He was Clemson's leading receiver. I mean, he was a quality player, but he's not that number one guy that they need. And so I think this forces Clemson, I think it forces Dabo Swinney to go into that portal. So looking at the roster, and I'll circle back on wide receiver in a second, but looking at the roster as of late on the night of Thursday, November 30th, so this will, I'm sure, will change very quickly, but there's currently 85 players on the roster. That assumes no one else transfers, which I'm sure they will. And that assumes that 2 out of these 4 unannounced players will leave and 2 will stay. And that's Will Shipley, Andrew Mukuba, Barrett Carter, and RJ Mickens. And I've listed them in my best guess without any inside knowledge on who's going to go and who's going to stay with Mickens. I think being most likely to stay. I think Clemson really needs either Carter or Mickens to stay. You can move Khalil Barnes to linebacker if you had to. You can keep him at safety if Mickens goes and Carter stays. But if they both leave, you might need a portal replacement. Shipley is an interesting one because if he does not leave, you have 7 running backs on scholarship, which seems like a poor allocation of scholarships. If he leaves, you're down to 6, and with David Ajamame coming in and Maffa returning, I think you feel really good about that group, even if he goes. Mukuba is a good player. You'd love for him to come back, but those guys in the secondary, when they got a chance to get drafted, they tend to go. I mentioned, there's going to be more guys that transfer. I think there's quite a few guys, particularly along the offensive line, where they just lost their position coach. Guys like Linthicum, Pennington, Tucker, John Williams, all of those guys haven't really broken through. It doesn't seem like they have a path to playing time. In fact, it seems like Clemson's going to bring in a transfer that would further block them. So I would be shocked if at least 1 offensive lineman doesn't transfer out. I would think even 2 or 3 potentially. We don't know what Brandon Spector is going to do. Will he use a COVID year to stay? And then on defense, Caden Story and Zero Patterson have gotten buried on that depth chart. Caden Story was a big-time prospect. Not saying he's going to transfer or anything like that. I'm just speculating based purely on the depth chart, who's going to go, who's going to stay. So I think, you're going to have probably 5 more guys leave, something like that. So that's probably 5 more spots, maybe 1 or 2 goes to incoming freshmen, and maybe 1 goes to a walk-on, but there's at least room for 2 to 4, call it, incoming transfers. And I don't think Dabo's going to continue to be shy about it. I think we'll likely see 1 on the offensive line. Clemson has already offered offensive tackle Alan Heron from Shorter College. I think that's really exciting. He's 6'6", 315 pounds. I don't know if the plan is to have him play at tackle or move inside. If it's a tackle, maybe they're thinking about bringing in 2 offensive linemen. I don't know what their plans are for Ryan Linthicum. If he's ready to be the starting center, then he would ascend to that role. But by the lack of playing time he saw, and of course there was Putnam and he was healthy and solid, perhaps that's not the case. But I think that's something to watch. I think wide receiver is the most pressing need following the Beaux Collins departure, which again I said was a net positive, and I say that because you see guys like Tez Walker transfer to UNC, Jamari Thrash transfer to Louisville. Obviously, you had Coleman go to Florida State. People like to say, well, not having Coleman is not why we lost that game. It's because of a missed kick or a fumble or whatever, and that's fine. You can blame individual games on whichever one individual play was most impactful or upsetting or whatever. But if you just think back, if Clemson had Keon Coleman this year, how many more games do they win? 1, 2, 3 even? And so I think you see Clemson go out and get a big-time impact wide receiver. I'd be really surprised if they didn't. You look at the wide receiver room, if no one else departs, including Brandon Spector, they only have 11 guys on scholarship right now. They only have 6 wide receivers with 15 or more career catches currently on scholarship. That would be Antonio Williams, Tyler Brown, Troy Stellato, Adam Randall, and Brandon Spector, down to 5 if Brandon Spector leaves. The other guys, Wesco and Cole Turner, Hannafin, TJ Moore, Johnson and Kelly. So a lot of inexperience you're going to count on. I think it's an absolute must there. Defensive end depends. They're going to lose both starting defensive ends for a second year in a row. Kay Denhoff and TJ Parker are probably your starters, with not much depth behind them if you don't add a transfer there. Linebacker, again, that goes back to what I was saying before about Barrett Carter. If Barrett Carter and Mickens come back, or even just one of them, you probably don't need to worry about that. But if they both go, now that we know Jeremiah Trotter's already declared for the NFL, you're going to need a linebacker and then a quarterback. If Paul Tyson comes back, you're good there. But if not, you're going to probably want to grab a third string or maybe even a second string, maybe someone who could actually challenge Cade Klubnik. I would be surprised if they went after a guy like Riley Leonard, who could really take the job from him. Although I think that obviously adding Riley Leonard would make almost any team better. But I do think if Paul Tyson were to leave, they would add a quarterback transfer. And frankly, we've seen how conservative Coach Sweeney is about having backup quarterbacks. When I say conservative, I mean making sure there's plenty of depth in that room so you don't get to a point where Maryland was a few years ago with a linebacker starting at quarterback. So the net of all this is Clemson's only lost a couple guys. They'll probably lose 4, 5, 6 more, which will open up spots for transfers. We're seeing Dabo's willingness to reach in and improve the roster through the portal, something we haven't seen before. And I think we'll see a couple transfers, not just one, but I think maybe as many as 3, 4, on the high side, maybe even 5 transfers this year. And I think it will make a big impact on Clemson getting better, especially with the expansion of the playoff next year. I think what they're doing right now will have Clemson as a real playoff contender, likely a playoff team next year. So I think you should feel really encouraged about the guys that are going or that are leaving, and the guys who they will bring in. They're already showing willingness to do that. Last thing I want to say here, don't forget to leave your comments below. I obviously want to share my opinion, but I want to hear yours too. So don't forget to leave a comment, like this video. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do so. It really helps it grow. I'm trying to get to 1,000 here before next season. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Lastly, just would be remiss to not mention this basketball team real quick. Going on the road, beating Alabama. They're 6-0. If you're a Clemson fan who's been burnt too many times by this basketball team, I get it. I totally get it. But don't miss out, because this could be one of Clemson's 3 or 4 best teams in school history. They are so deep. They have a great front court, and they have the type of guard play that wins multiple games in the tournament. At Alabama on the road, Chase Hunter struggled for a lot of the game. Then he came on late, made some huge clutch 3-pointers in the final 9 minutes, knocked down 3 of them, clutch shots. Joe Girard, the transfer from Syracuse that everyone wanted, was down to Clemson. LSU, he chose us, made some big-time shots, made some good passes. Clemson's got some good players. They even have some bench depth with RJ Godfrey out of suburban Atlanta. He's a sophomore, and he's really physical, son of an NFL player. This is a good team, and it's not a team that plays good, sound, fundamental basketball and they can find ways to win. This is a talented team that is also good and sound and fundamental. This is a talented, deep team. I think it's the most talented team Coach Brownell's ever had. And for all this criticism he gets, I really respect that he has evolved and has stopped getting guys that are defense first but can't score. And now he's getting scorers and teaching them defense. And they're a well-rounded team. The defense is good, not great, but the offense is maybe the best one we've seen at Clemson, maybe in my lifetime. I'm really impressed with them, so don't miss out on what is going to be a really, really fun basketball season. So anyway, please like this video. Thanks for watching, and definitely leave your comments below. Go Tigers.